In a time long ago, in a land filled with stories and wonders, there lived a man named Thomas. He was one of the 12 disciples of Jesus, a group chosen by Jesus to spread love and hope to the world. Thomas was often called Didymus, which means twin in Greek, but many people simply knew him as Thomas. He was known for his honest and straightforward nature. He asked questions and sought answers, always wanting to understand the truth. Thomas grew up in a small town called Galilee. It was a place where people worked hard, farming the land and caring for their families. As a young man, Thomas was like any other. He enjoyed spending time with friends, sharing stories and dreaming about the future. But deep down, he felt a pull towards something greater, something that would change his life forever. One day, Thomas heard about a man named Jesus. People spoke of him with awe and admiration. They said he could heal the sick, calm storms, and even bring the dead back to life. Thomas was curious. He wanted to see this man for himself. So, one sunny morning, he set out to find Jesus. As he walked through the bustling streets, he felt excitement bubbling in his chest. When Thomas finally found Jesus, he was amazed. Jesus spoke with kindness, and his words were like music to Thomas's ears. He watched as Jesus healed a blind man, restoring his sight with just a touch. Thomas felt a spark of hope ignite within him. He realized that Jesus was special, and he wanted to follow him. From that day on, Thomas joined Jesus and the other disciples. They traveled from town to town, sharing stories of love and faith. They met many people along the way, some who believed in Jesus and others who were skeptical. Thomas often found himself in deep conversations, asking questions that others were afraid to voice. He wanted to understand everything about Jesus and the message he brought. One day, while they were walking, Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "I am going to prepare a place for you. You know the way to the place I am going." Thomas, always the one to seek clarity, raised his hand and said, "Lord, we don't know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus smiled gently at Thomas and replied, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." Thomas felt comforted by these words. He realized that faith was not just about knowing the answers, but about trusting in Jesus and following him on the journey. As time passed, Thomas witnessed many miracles. He saw Jesus feed thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and fish. He heard Jesus teach about love, forgiveness, and kindness. Thomas felt his heart grow with each lesson, but he also felt the weight of doubt sometimes. He wanted to believe completely, but he was human, and doubts crept in like shadows. Then came a day that changed everything. After Jesus was arrested and crucified, Thomas was heartbroken. He watched as the man he had followed and believed in was taken away from him. The world felt dark and empty without Jesus. The other disciples were filled with fear and confusion. They gathered together, trying to make sense of what had happened. 3 days later, something miraculous occurred. The disciples were in a locked room, still in shock from the events that had unfolded. Suddenly, Jesus appeared among them, even though the doors were locked. He greeted them with peace, saying, "Peace be with you." The disciples were overjoyed, but Thomas was not there. When he returned, the others excitedly told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas shook his head and said, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." He felt a deep need for proof, a desire to touch the reality of what had happened. His heart ached with longing, but his mind was clouded with doubt. A week later, the disciples were together again, and this time, Thomas was with them. Jesus appeared once more, and he looked directly at Thomas. "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas was overwhelmed. He fell to his knees and exclaimed, "My Lord and my God!" In that moment, all his doubts vanished. He knew without a doubt that Jesus was alive. Jesus smiled at Thomas and said, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Thomas felt a rush of gratitude. He understood that faith was a journey, and sometimes it required patience and understanding. After the resurrection, Thomas became a passionate follower of Jesus. He traveled far and wide, sharing the message of love and hope. He spoke to people from different cultures and backgrounds, spreading the good news of Jesus. He faced many challenges along the way, but his faith only grew stronger. He remembered the moments of doubt and how Jesus had patiently helped him to believe. Thomas eventually traveled to distant lands, sharing the story of Jesus with those who had never heard it before. He went to places like India, where he preached and baptized many people. His heart was filled with joy as he saw others come to believe in Jesus. He became known as a brave and faithful disciple, willing to face any danger for the sake of spreading love. As the years passed, Thomas faced trials and hardships. He encountered people who did not welcome his message, and some even opposed him fiercely. But through it all, he held on to his faith. He remembered the words of Jesus and the love he had experienced. Each time he faced doubt or fear, he would recall the moment he had touched Jesus' hands and felt the warmth of his love. One day, as Thomas was preaching in a village, he faced a group of people who were angry and hostile. They did not want to hear his message and threatened him. Thomas stood firm, his heart pounding, but he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He spoke of love and forgiveness, of hope and redemption. His words touched some hearts, but others remained hardened. In the end, St. Thomas paid the ultimate price for his faith. Around 72 AD, while preaching the gospel in Mylapore, India, he was pierced by a spear and martyred by local opponents of the faith. Yet even in his final moments, Thomas stood firm in the truth he had once doubted, but later embraced with unwavering conviction. He had discovered that love conquers fear, and that faith, once found, can move mountains. His life and death became a powerful testament to the strength of belief, showing the world that even the most skeptical heart can become a bold witness for Christ. Thomas's journey teaches us that it is okay to have questions and doubts. Just as he sought answers, we too can ask and explore our beliefs. Faith is not always about having all the answers. Sometimes it is about trusting in something greater than ourselves. Thomas showed us that even when we stumble and fall, love can lift us up and guide us forward. Today, many people remember Thomas as Doubting Thomas. But he is much more than that. He is a symbol of courage, honesty, and unwavering faith. His story reminds us that it is okay to struggle with belief, and that in our search for truth, we can find a path to love and understanding. As we reflect on Thomas's life, we are encouraged to embrace our own journeys of faith. We can learn to ask questions, seek answers, and share love with others. Just like Thomas, we can touch the lives of those around us, spreading hope and joy in a world that often feels dark. Thomas's legacy lives on through the countless lives he touched. His story inspires us to be brave in our beliefs, to share love, and to seek understanding. In a world filled with uncertainty, we can take comfort in knowing that faith can guide us, just as it guided Thomas on his remarkable journey.